Safety is probably the biggest concern about me coming out myself.
Do I carry a firearm?
We have firearm that we carry with us at all times.
Wildlife.
Stuff you see on Discovery Channel.
Mountain lions will get you from behind.
Things like wildfire.
And make sure that your kids stay close to the fire.
This episode is inspired by a most wanted topic from you guys. I receive questions like this in my comments, DMs, on a weekly basis. Something along the line of fear, danger, self-protection, and whether or not I carry a Glock. I'll read you one as an example. Hi there, thank you so much for your channel. It has been so inspiring for me as I'm in the middle of building out my overlanding vehicle. I will hit the road in August. One video I've been searching for is how do you handle fear? Sleeping alone at night, tackling through tough terrain alone, etc. It's one of my reasons for doing this is that I like to confront fear, but being out alone at night, sleeping in my car does bring fear for me. So we'll love to hear how you have handled fear and gotten through. I really love when you guys share your story with me, and it is my honor to be able to help. Hi, this is Overland Lady. In the past few years, I've been traveling around Australia and Canada. Most of these trips were done solo, which means I was alone except the company of my Land Cruiser and you guys. Safety is a major concern for all solo adventures, and somehow the danger intensifies when the individual is a female. How do you protect yourself in the wild, and how to stay safe living on the road? We have a lot to unpack here. So to answer this question more in depth, we have two special guests from different parts of the world to share their tips about self-protection based on the specific concerns in their area. But before we jump in, let me grab a drink. Yes, a drink. A drink, like a protein shake. This is not the first time I mentioned about protein intake, and it will not be the last. I'm perhaps the most health conscious overlander out here on the net, because your body and brain fuels on nutrition, and taking care of your body is essentially the most fundamental and basic first step that you should do in terms of self-protection. Insert our sponsor for this episode, Rucho. It's never too late to start a new Rucho and incorporate a healthy habit into your routine. Rucho recently launched their Essential Protein, which contains the complete amino acid profile, 20 grams of vegan protein per serving, soy-free, gluten-free, vegan-friendly, allergen-free, no added sugar. All ingredients are traceable, like the vanilla bean harvested in Madagascar. Instead of using the blender they have to make a shake, I thought, why not make it a healthy smoothie? And use it while on the road so you can have a smoothie at camp. Got some ice in there, unsweetened almond milk, some blueberries, peanut butter powder. Oh wow, just the powder tastes like cake batter. Okay, let's try this, I can't wait. Peanut butter jelly protein shake. You're welcome. Get a whopping 20% off your first month by going to rucho.com/overlandlady. Referring back to the message, my first question asking back to her was, what do you define fear? What do you mean by fear? Because danger can mean different things to different people based on their situation, where they are, or even what past trauma they have, if we really want to go down to the rabbit hole of psychology. So my point is, what does danger mean for you or in your area? Danger can mean totally different things and be vastly different in Africa versus in the Arctic. And overlanding is such a broad term in terms of what overland means. Go check out Christoph at Get Out Go's video, link in the description. The methods and essential gear that we need to accommodate these conditions will also be different. And in terms of essential gear, go check out Will at Venture to Rome's video, link in description. And that is why I'm inviting these two legends to be our special guests for this episode. Let's say hi.
Hi, I'm Will from Venture to Rome, and on this channel we go on epic adventures in the American Northwest. We do rig modifications and gear reviews, and we just celebrate the overlanding lifestyle.
Hi, my name's Christoph, and my channel is Get Out Go. It's all about overlanding and bush camping in Africa. So if you're interested, please head over to my channel and have a look.
But today we're talking about personal protection. Personal protection is for the elements, is for the wildlife, and is also for the people that you might run into when you're out in remote locations.
I would usually define fear or danger into three main categories. Environmental,
People and wildlife.
So first, environmental. This usually just means the weather and natural disaster, things like wildfire, avalanche, flood. The best way to deal with this, I would say, is by prevention. There's really no way that you can fight any of these situations when you're in it unless you're in firefighter for wildland fire, which I'll recommend you a book called Smoke Jumper. Go read it, it's really good. Get your knowledge into wildfires. Okay, back to the topic. Stay on top of the news. Stay on top of weather forecast. Say if you're already out in the bush with no cell reception, couldn't check weather. This is where Zoleo comes in. As a satellite communicator, they also have a remote weather report that you can check on in the app. They've saved me so many times. Essentially just know where you're going and how the weather is in that area so that you can better avoid running yourself into trouble that you essentially couldn't really deal with.
So when it comes to weather as a threat to our person, the way we think about it is we have gear that can be waterproof. If it's windy, we have gear that can sustain a lot of wind. And if it's really, really bad, we can always get inside our rig, get inside the Jeep, and outlast a storm. But the nice thing is about overlanding is that you have a vehicle, and for the most part, unless it's really severe weather, you can just leave. But I think the planning is the most important part. Being aware of the information, being aware of the weather and what's coming will help keep you from getting into a dangerous weather situation.
Oh, another tip. This might be foreign to most of us who don't drive on the beach. Watch for tide when you're driving on the beach. Ask me how I know. We almost lost the car. It's burning underneath and we have to dig it out. Number 2, wild animals.
One of the biggest attractions for African overlanding is wildlife.
In Australia, you got your snakes, your bugs, and your dingoes. Where Will is also similar to BC.
And in Idaho, the biggest predators we have are wolves, mountain lions, and bears. Those 3 different categories of animals can be very dangerous in the right situation or in the wrong situation.
Let's start at camp. A fenced campsite doesn't guarantee you won't have any animal encounters. Leopards and monkeys don't really care about fences, and elephants sometimes push these over as well. My first bit of advice is to always be aware of your surroundings, be it in a fenced or unfenced campsite, so you're not surprised. Always keep tents and vehicles accessible, and if you spot a potentially dangerous animal, you can retreat to one of these facing the animal.
If we're in a place where we know there's predator activity like that, we adjust our camp. We adjust how we organize our camp. We adjust the rules of camp for our kids. We adjust what we eat and how we dispose of any waste and the smells that we create.
A rule of thumb, clean up your camp.
Never leave food, garbage or toiletries out in the open or even in tents where it's visible. Never take citrus fruit into wild areas, as elephants love citrus and they will destroy almost anything to get to it. Never feed wild animals. You're potentially creating great danger for yourself and others, as these animals will start to associate humans with food.
Those things, I think, are probably the number one thing you can do to mitigate the risks from those animals, because they're generally coming into your camp for food. And if you're there between them and their food, or if they see you as food, but the smells brought them in, you've got a problem.
Another tip is similar to the first one. Know where you're going, know what sort of animal is in that area. Maybe just avoid it. Here I will borrow one section from one of my early solo travel videos where I use Gaia GPS to help me plan the area I'm going and avoiding bear country. Probably the biggest concern about me coming out myself. Actually on the way, I saw quite a few cattle just roaming freely on the road. That might be a good sign because usually it means there is no bear. In terms of bear, we are in Canada, we will see some. Actually on my way on Highway 1 towards Banff, I saw at least 2 just right beside the highway. It is fall and they are coming out looking for food, so it's something I need to watch out about. There's a new map called Top Notch Map. It's a guy actually in BC. He created a way more detailed Gaia map layer. For example, When we zoom into this area, all these signs you see, those means you might be in danger.
And then if you do run into one of those types of animals in the wild, they each behave differently. So wolves behave differently than mountain lions, than bears. And so we just try to understand what we should do if and when we run into those animals. You know, if you run into a black bear, for instance, it's very different than running into a grizzly bear. If you run into a pack of wolves, it's very different than running into a mountain lion, which you will probably never really run into because they're ambush hunters. So mountain lions will get you from behind. So you just have to be kind of mindful if you're in mountain lion territory. If there are other prey running through your camp, just be really, really on alert and make sure that your kids stay close to the fire.
I prefer using a rooftop tent as it lifts me above most of the critters, but regardless of the type of tent you use, I'd suggest you don't leave it at night if you can help it. For doing your business, that's why we like a privacy cubicle attached to the vehicle next to the tent with our toilet inside. Never leave open tents unattended either. The other most likely encounter you'll have with wildlife is while you're driving. Do not crowd animals, give them enough space, especially elephants. Do not provoke animals by honking, shouting, or any other loud noises. We also have pepper spray and then an air horn.
Last year at Alberta Outdoor Adventure Expo, I met a couple from Yukon across from my camp. After listening to my trip plan, they told me a lot about Yukon and left me a bear spray and air horn behind my solar panel. The strap says, "May not need it, but just in case." A rush of warmth filled my heart full. You see, we may travel solo, but we are never alone. Number 3, human factors. I heard this more so commonly from girls. This sort of idea of a girl alone out there, all sorts of horrible things that could happen to them. I mean, Highway of Tears, it's such a prime example of what could happen in its worst way. And obviously we all want to avoid that happening to us. Whether you're a male or female or whatever you would like to identify yourself as, being out there alone do hold a threat against other people if there is ill intention. However, in my experience, it's usually the opposite.
You good?
Yeah?
I thought you were changing your tire.
Oh no, yeah, I'm all good, thank you.
Good.
I find the wilder you go, the farther you go, people tend to be nicer. Especially in small towns, in very remote areas, people rely on each other to stay alive. The communities are tighter, people are more friendly, more supportive, more helpful, because really if you don't, you can have a really hard time just living per se. And so in those sort of towns, I do find people to be more helpful than anything else. I can't tell you how many times I've had people coming to ask me if I'm in trouble when I was just stopped in the trailhead or finishing a trail, airing up and down my tires.
Everything okay?
Yeah, I'm just trying to air down a bit so it's not that bumpy
Oh, okay.
on top.
Okay.
And usually when I reach out to ask questions, what I find helpful is to show up confident, but don't be a jerk. And usually people reciprocate. If you show up timid, that might trigger people that sort of have a bit of ill intention to think, maybe I can take some advantage out of this. But if you come forward confident, knowing what you're doing, knowing where you're getting, and asking what you want in a way that's not showing up as I am helpless, I've usually received nothing but positive stuff. And there are times where I camped at provincial campground, people will come to talk and share a lot of secret spots that they found throughout the years. You know, the more experienced people, and then they love to share their stories. And all of these, I don't find it to be a bad thing. I guess what I can say in this matter is try not to hold such negative view on people. I'm not denying that there are bad intentions around, but usually that's not people's default. And obviously depending on where you go, I personally don't have experience traveling to places say like Mexico or Ecuador, South America, places that could be potentially more dangerous due to human factor. Also, don't hate me on this and don't quote me on this. These are just what I've heard I have also heard people that have been to those places having no trouble at all and then finding themselves surprised at how little trouble they ran into. So really it's educating yourself, knowing that there might be a potential, but do not hold that against people.
I think the number one thing that we think about is de-escalation of a situation. If there's conflict with somebody else out in a remote part of Idaho, the best thing that we can do is just not have a conflict. No camping spot, no piece of property is really worth a conflict that gets to the point of danger. This just happened the other day. Somebody rolled up on us in camp and they had a mining claim to where we were, and it looked like it was kind of heading towards a conflict. We just said, we'll go. This is yours. No problem. We'll pack up. We'll leave, because that conflict is unpredictable. And we can remove ourselves from that threat just by removing ourselves entirely. I think that most situations can be handled by empathy and communication and giving. I think that can handle most situations. Really, it has to get down to a point where there's zero other options to save my life or the lives of my family in order for that to be something that should be used.
You have to be aware of your surroundings, especially in bigger cities, but most of Africa is not a war zone. Take care of your valuables, as petty theft can occur anywhere, even outside of Africa. Talk to locals and other travelers about areas you're traveling into and how safe it is. Take a defensive approach when driving. Don't try to rush. Driving in Africa needs to be a slow, careful affair, and never drive at night, primarily because of obstacles like livestock, wildlife, and pedestrians.
So 4.2 and 3 about animal and human, these are usually where I get questions, especially in the comments, asking if I carry a pistol or suggesting that I should bring a Glock with me. Refer to your local gun law or the places that you travel.
We do have a firearm in South Africa, but that's more for city life than out here in the bush, to be honest. Most national parks and reserves will either seal your firearm or won't allow them at all. You can't take a firearm across international borders either.
If there is a real threat, we have a firearm that we carry with us at all times. And it's pretty safe to assume that everyone else has a gun too. So sometimes showing a firearm actually escalates a situation when that's the last thing that's needed.
So in Canada, in order to own a firearm, you need to have a license called Possession Acquisition License, PAL, P-A-L. And the reasons for you to own a firearm cannot be self-protection. It can only be hunting or sports shooting. So for self-protection, either it being protection from animal or protection from other people is a big no-no. And handguns, pistols, those are usually under the umbrella of restricted firearms, which means there's a whole different rules of how you should store it, transport it, and display it. You can only transport a restricted firearm between your home, a gun club, a gunsmith, or a gun range. Technically, you can't even stop in between these trips to grab a bite. So there is no legal ways for me to carry a handgun. I don't want to dive into this too much because I am not a gun expert, but I'm sure there are people that are super into this and maybe you guys can share some ideas in the comments, but this is what we have here locally in Canada and it's what I need to work with. I know I said I usually categorize them into 3, but if there's a 4, I will say though there is a 4. It's more so mentally in your mind.
When you're in the wilderness, after sunset down the horizon, in the darkness alone, when the world quiet down and you can hear your breath and perhaps something else, when you start to remember all the horror movies you watched, all the ways that ghosts or spirits come to hunt you, to eat your flesh and drink your soul.
Spooky, isn't it? I know this might sound very far off, but I'm sure some of you can relate to this, that when you're alone in the darkness, you tend to get afraid of things that other people might think it's ridiculous, or later on you might think it's ridiculous. When you're alone, your mind just naturally go to random places. Oh, what's that noise? Oh, what could be there? And then I start to freak myself out. I end up just run into my car and set up my sleep and just call it for a night. That's it. I am not staying out there any second longer. I don't really have any tips on this. I still haven't seen a ghost. Yes, sometimes when you travel to some remote towns, especially those with rich history, abandoned ghost towns, it can make your goosebumps pop out and make the hair behind your neck all stand up because of the history. Somehow it just gives you an idea of past spirits still being in there. A little creepy. For that, I am alone here. Okay, this is going too far, but I still haven't seen a ghost, even though that the feeling is really, you know, the shivering. I don't really have a good tips on this, other than don't watch horror movies. It really gives you so many ideas that you don't need about different ways that you can die, or not die, but really experiencing very horrible things. So don't watch horror movies. I watched so many of those when I was little. It was fine when I watched them because I was mainly analyzing how they might have done the visual effects stuff. But while watching it, it's giving me so many ideas of all the ways that I could die, or all the ways where the ghosts can come up from under the bed, from hanging on the trees, from... Okay, I'll stop here. Anyways, guys, those are my main ways of dealing with danger, dealing with fear in terms of self-protection. Maybe this can act as that little bit of push for you to get out if that's what you're hesitating on. So what are the ways that you deal with fear and protect yourself out in the wild in remote journeys that last for a very long time, what we call overlanding? And feel free to leave it in a comment below. And if you want to, tell me your favorite gun. See you next time.
So bottom line is, sure, take a few precautions, but don't let fear stop you from overlanding in one of the most amazing places in the world.
I want to say thank you to Monique for having us on her channel. Love this collaboration, love your channel, and I hope to do lots and lots more of it in the future. So thanks to Monique. And for those of you watching, please come check out Venture to Roam. We'd love to have you see our videos. And if you want to stay a while, you can be a subscriber too. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.
What the hell did I do? I didn't close the lid properly, that's why. Oh my god, no, now I have to make another one.